Welcome to Thriller Recaps. Today, I am explaining the movie, The Exception, explaining every scene as it happens. Watch till the end, and please like, share, and subscribe if you enjoy this. The movie starts with a girl lying unconscious on the floor of a forest, but it turns out to be a dream. Brandt, an army captain, wakes up to find the woman he spent the night with getting dressed to leave. He asks if they can do this again, but she isn't excited about being with a military man again. Just then, Brandt receives a call from his superior. This scene is set in Berlin during the 1940s. His superior asks if he knows anything about a certain Kaiser of the Germans. Brandt only knew that the Kaiser was a poor leader and strategist, said to be exiled. However, it turns out he was alive and still a significant figure to the Germans. Brandt's new task is to protect the Kaiser, even though he doesn't want to. He agrees to the assignment. Brandt travels to the Netherlands, where he meets the Kaiser's head guard staff. After reporting to an inspector, someone who does not want the Kaiser alive but still believes in his safety, he is given the job of protecting the Kaiser and also serving as a spy. The Kaiser is an old man, and he, along with his head guard, is discussing land strategies when a new maid named Mika comes in to serve coffee. The Kaiser's behavior makes Mika uncomfortable, but he makes a joke and asks her to join the briefing afterward. Mika quickly leaves, visibly shaken. Mika was sent to invite Brandt over for dinner. Brandt seemed interested in her and asked her to take off her clothes. Mika complied partway, but then Brandt started groaning and stopped. He told her he would be happy to join them for dinner. The Kaiser dressed in a military uniform, matching Brandt's, and got ready for the dinner. Before Brandt could reach the dining hall, the head guard handed him a list of rules. Among these rules was to accept everything the Kaiser said, refer to him as Sir, and his wife as Madam. When Brandt arrived at the table, he greeted them warmly. The Kaiser made jokes about the strength of the monarchy and how it was the most important thing. The Kaiser's wife then asked Brandt about his family. The mention of Brandt's family seemed to anger the Kaiser, who left the table abruptly. Brandt apologized, as he never intended to ruin the dinner. Brandt returned to his room outside the main house and was surprised to find Mika there. He wondered how she had gotten in. Mika told him to take off his clothes, and he did, standing naked in front of her. She stepped closer and gently traced a scar on his stomach. Afterward, Mika left, even though Brandt wanted her to stay the night. The head guard, Sigurd, informed the Kaiser about Brandt talking about a British spy who was supposedly out to kill him. Sigurd also requested to move into the main house. The Kaiser asked Sigurd for his opinion on Brandt, and Sigurd described him as a cocky young officer who thought he could win a war on his own. Sigurd then asked if he could give the Kaiser his daily briefing, but the Kaiser declined. The Kaiser was feeding his ducks while his wife and Sigurd watched. They were close to achieving their goal, so they couldn't afford to back down. Mika arrived with more bread for the Kaiser. While they were talking, Brandt joined them. The Kaiser suggested that Mika show Brandt to his new room in the main house. Brandt introduced himself as Stefan and asked for Mika's name. She told him, but warned him that any involvement between staff members was forbidden and that if anyone found out, she would lose her job. Later, the inspector visited Brandt to give him an update. The inspector also commented on Mika, expressing his interest in Dutch women. Brandt told him to focus on his work, which was finding a signal on the British spy, and he did so with noticeable frustration. The Kaiser was breaking wood when Brandt approached him. The Kaiser wanted to know about a particular war Brandt had fought in Poland. It turned out that the Kaiser's oldest son had died on the front lines in Poland. Mika visited a man, expressing her fear. She seemed to be the British spy, and she and the man were definitely plotting something against the Kaiser. Mika left, glancing over her shoulder with every step. At another dinner, the Kaiser spoke about how he never wanted to fight the last war. He had even sent a telegram to the other side asking them to stop, but they didn't. Sigurd noticed the conversation had gone off track and suggested showing Brandt the Kaiser's military uniform collection. Brandt thought the Kaiser could have sent another telegram and expressed this opinion to Sigurd. Later, Mika returned to her room and found Brandt there. Brandt apologized for how he had treated her the first time they met, and they ended up having sex. Afterward, glowing from their encounter and covered in sweat, they talked. Mika revealed she was Jewish, but Brandt didn't care about that. They continued kissing and eventually woke up. Mika noticed that Brandt had bad dreams when he slept. Brandt didn't respond but got dressed and told her that whatever she told him should remain confidential for her safety. Brandt then received a visit from the inspector. The inspector informed him about the progress of the transmitter signal and mentioned that SS leader Himmler would be visiting. Himmler was a highly respected figure. The inspector warned Brandt not to share this information with anyone except the Kaiser and said he would return in an hour to conduct a thorough search of the staff. Brandt requested a private meeting with the Kaiser. However, before he could discuss the visit, the Kaiser's wife arrived with news that she had received a telegram about Himmler's visit. The Kaiser reacted angrily, but his wife tried to cover it up as a joke. Brandt asked Sigurd about running a search and inquired if there were any firearms around. He learned that the Kaiser used the firearms for shooting and that the footmen cleaned them. Brandt suspected something involving the maid. The Kaiser's wife met with Brandt and apologized for her husband's harsh words. She also suggested that Brandt should speak well of them to Himmler. She claimed she wanted the monarchy to return to restore Germany, but it was clear that she was more interested in money and power. The inspector returned, and the search began. Brandt informed him about the telegram the Kaiser's wife had received and asked him to find out who leaked it. The Kaiser was furious about the search of his house. He summoned Mika to bring him duck feed, and during their conversation, he spoke about the woman he had first loved. She had married a Romanov and had been killed. The Kaiser expressed his strange satisfaction with her death. The moral of his story was to be careful about what you wish for. After her conversation with the Kaiser, Mika hurried to her room and found it safely wrapped. She quickly changed, picked up her shopping basket, and rushed to town. Brandt noticed her leaving while he was talking to the inspector after the search. They had not found anything on the Kaiser's staff. Mika visited her accomplice and informed him about Himmler's visit. She wanted to kill Himmler out of vengeance, as he had killed her father and husband. She instructed the man to alert London and insisted that she had to go through with it, even though it was essentially a suicide mission. The man reluctantly agreed. Brandt was smoking when Mika opened the door to his room. She asked if it was a bad time, but Brandt invited her to stay. They lay together, and Brandt shared his experience in Poland. He recounted how the SS had machine-gunned women and children, and he was unable to save a child who died in front of him. It was a traumatic experience for him. Brandt then asked Mika to marry him. Mika thought it was ridiculous, but before she could say more, the door burst open. Mika's accomplice had been caught when the transmitter picked up his attempt to connect to London. Wilhelm, the Kaiser, was breaking wood as usual when Sigurd brought him water. Wilhelm expressed his thoughts about the SS coming but didn't seem surprised. They were still talking when Wilhelm was summoned to oversee an important matter. Mika and Brandt had been caught, which was troubling. The Kaiser's wife tried to dismiss Mika, but the Kaiser said there was no need for that and asked everyone else to leave except Mika and Brandt. His wife tried to protest, but the Kaiser insisted. Despite having lost his position of power, he still ruled his household. The Kaiser told Mika and Brandt about his past escapades with a cohort and a prostitute, both of whom had children with him while he was already married. He expressed his dislike for hypocrisy. Mika wouldn't lose her job, she just needed to be discreet. They thanked him and left. Brandt received a telephone message from the inspector and went to meet him. The inspector informed him that Mika's accomplice had been caught. He was a pastor and had been badly beaten. Brandt maintained his composure, even though he knew things were about to get messy. The Kaiser's wife spoke to Sigurd, confused about his recent change in behavior. Sigurd explained that he was being cautious because the SS was capable of killing them all. Himmler was known for his ruthlessness, and the Kaiser often spoke without filter. For their safety, Sigurd believed it was right to adopt a more cautious attitude. Himmler arrived in grand style. After a quick introduction, he was ushered into the house. Mika seemed to be preparing herself for an attack when Brandt pulled her aside, despite her protests. He informed her about the pastor's arrest and that the pastor would soon confess to her involvement. Brandt had followed Mika the other day and had seen her with the pastor. He didn't want to choose between her and his loyalty to the nation, but Mika was determined to continue with her plan. It was either Brandt arrested her now or she would carry on. Brandt pulled her into a hug and kissed her on the forehead several times. The Kaiser's wife knocked on Himmler's door and found a naked woman in his room, but she chose not to comment on it. She handed Himmler an envelope filled with cash, saying it was to show her appreciation and to acknowledge the challenging state of the economy. Himmler took the money with a serious expression and thanked her. When the Kaiser's wife returned, she found her husband seated solemnly. When she asked him what was wrong, he told her that Himmler had informed him they would have the chance to return to Berlin as the king. The wife was delighted, but her husband thought it wise to keep this information secret. Despite this, his wife subtly shared the news with the housekeeper. Sigurd also heard about it and congratulated Wilhelm. The inspector visited Brandt in his room. They were drinking when Himmler arrived alone. Himmler revealed that his announcement about returning to Berlin was a deception. The real plan was to catch anyone who still believed in the monarchy. Therefore, it was Brandt's and the inspector's duty to report every transmission to Himmler. At dinner, Himmler spoke about the Jewish people and the cruelty they faced, including the suffering of children. His harsh and inhumane words made the table go silent. Wilhelm quickly tried to clear the air and shake off the awkwardness, but Himmler decided it was time to leave. Mika and Brandt were present at the dinner. Mika whispered to Brandt that while the others were bound by rules, Brandt was the exception. The SS departed from the Kaiser's house. As the inspector was leaving, Brandt asked him to inform him immediately if the pastor said anything. Inside, Brandt asked Sigurd if an officer could be loyal to something other than his country. Sigurd responded that the officer should question whether the country even existed. This led Brandt to tell Sigurd that Himmler's offer was a trap. Sigurd thanked him and left. Brandt returned to Mika's room, only to find it empty. Mika was meeting with Wilhelm, where she revealed that she had a message from the British Prime Minister. Wilhelm realized she was the secret agent but showed no fear. Brandt, still confused, heard Mika screaming for help. She told him that Wilhelm had collapsed suddenly. As they worried, Brandt received a call from the inspector. The pastor had revealed Mika's involvement. Brandt tried to grab Mika, but she pulled out a gun. He told her to trust him. The Kaiser's wife was the first to reach Wilhelm. Wilhelm confessed he didn't want to return to Berlin but wanted to stay here. His wife, who had been so focused on her desires, also decided she didn't want it if he didn't. They embraced. Brandt and Sigurd arrived in a van. Brandt quickly lifted Wilhelm to take him to the hospital. Outside the gate, a search was underway to find out who had left the premises. Mika, however, was already in the van with Wilhelm. Brandt planned to sneak her out, and although it was the wrong thing to do, Wilhelm was willing to help. Brandt managed to convince the inspector to let him pass, but the inspector insisted on checking the van first. Just as the inspector was about to open it, Brandt shot him, and they drove away. Once they were in a safe zone, Mika thanked Wilhelm, who was glad to say goodbye. Soon after, Wilhelm lost consciousness, but fortunately it was only because he was asleep. Mika got out of the van, and although Brandt wanted to follow her, he couldn't abandon his country. He asked her to marry him from a distance, and she agreed, but only after the war was over. Brandt planned to cover up the shooting of the inspector by making it look like the secret agent did it. The movie ends with Brandt receiving a package from London, a book that brought a smile to his face. It also shows Sigurd telling Wilhelm that they had good news from Brandt in Berlin. Finally, it shows a heavily pregnant Mika. Please like, share, and subscribe.